All right, welcome back. We are COMP1116. That's Game Programming 3 in the fall 2025 semester at Georgian, and it's week 11, part 2 of our broadcast and recording. And in this part, we just finished talking about how to create a base character class. And then because we have some duplication that we can use, instead of duplicating code, we can use it in both the enemy and the main character. And now what we want to do is we want to actually enable the enemy to attack. Let's do that. Now again, it won't do damage today, but it will actually attack. So let's do this next. So we have the ability to attack, but we need to enable it in the C++ code. So let's do that. So again, go back here, File, Save All, and let's close off this and go into our enemy class. So there's the enemy.h and there's the enemy.cpp. Lots of stuff opened up here. Again, I like to close off things I don't need. For now, I don't need base character. I don't need main character. I'm working on the enemy, so I'm just going to keep the enemy stuff open. Usually I like the H left to the left and the enemy CPP to the right. That's just me. That's how I work. And what I want to do is go to this on action radius overlap. So again, I can do a fast kind of jump on action radius overlap right here and takes us down to here. So what we want to change is in the up here, we use the UE log. Let's take this UE log away. Okay. I also don't want to show this on-screen message anymore. So that was just for debugging purposes to know that it's working. And all we're doing is we're going to clear the patrol timer and play the attack montage. It's that simple. So we can say play attack montage. And notice that this is calling from the base character class. So again, why it's working is, sorry, I should probably not close that off to explain so that you guys can understand. Hopefully you already know what I'm going to go with, but base character, I put it in the protected section, and we talked about last time how base character has, what we're doing with it anyway is when protected, it allows us to see the child classes to see and use these things. Now, by the way, notice how it says function is not implemented, but actually in the base character.cpp, the function is implemented, right? So, sometimes this is behind. Even this says set up player input component not implemented, but it is. Don't panic if you see these things. Sometimes Visual Studio takes time to do all this linking and everything else. One day I think this will be better. I'm not sure if they're going to fix it with Visual Studio 2026, but I find that the linkages, like to detect whether it's actually been implemented or not, which is just a helper, feature, is working. And this came in because I'll tell you, back in the day when we used to do C++, there's no warning. Like it would just like you forgot to implement the function. It would just like, oh well, you forgot. Oh, it broke. Why did it break? I don't know. Let's take a look. Oh crap, I forgot to implement the function. Right. So so that warns you, but the warnings take time to update. So what I was going with was protected. The protected section, anything in here is available in the child classes, just like if it was in public, right? So this is why we put it here. And that means that, going back to the enemy.cpp, play attack montage is available for me just to type in, because it's almost as if it's in the same class itself. Like it's almost as if I have it in my enemy CPP class. In fact, if you think about what this means not just inherited, but also is a. So we can say that the enemy is a base character, right? And same thing with main character. Main character is a base character, right? So maybe base character isn't the best name, also. Think about the relationship that we're forming between the two, as an example. But it makes sense that both of them are base characters. Okay. So now that we've done this, that's the first part. And now we should be able to make it work just like that. So if I press Control F5, right, then all we've done is enabled it with one function call, similar to what we would have done for the player. Instead of the player doing it one click, the enemy is going to do it when the player is close enough. So when the player is close enough, once they're within the action radius overlap, that kind of the central sphere, whether I'm from behind them, you know, or whether I'm coming from the front and then they can see me and they're in their sensing radius, sorry, their sensing cone, then I'm going to be, you know, I can be attacked by using this. I'm going to clear the patrol timer and it's going to start attacking the player right away if I'm close enough. Well, let's test this out. So if I press play now, we should see that happen. So if I run up, let's see, let's grab the sword. Once they're in I'm in their vicinity, which I am, he's going to start coming up and then he's going to start attacking. One, and he's going to keep, now see how it stops? So it only attacks once, right? What if I go back? It's going to attack again, right? Two, but random ones all the time, right? So again, go back out here and 3 different ones, right? That's the same one. That's the jumping one. So you can see all of it works. And the same thing happens if I go behind him. If I kind of leave his sensing sphere, his attack sphere, and I go behind him, he's going to try and attack, but he's attacking way over there. Look. Because he doesn't know what he's just attacking right in front of himself. He's not spinning around and attacking me over here, right? It's like way over there. That's where he's going. So again, not the most efficient use, right, at all, but it's a good start. And then we can keep on forcing him to attack if I just get kind of come in and out, right? So that's the first step. So we have that part done. We enabled room motion already before this, right? Because I wanted to prepare for this. So that's a little better, is what it says. Okay. So this is the second problem. So the second problem now is that we have the enemy stops attacking after it attacks us once. And again, we can fix this by creating an attack timer in the enemy.h. So again, let's just go back to the Unreal Engine, file, save all, and we'll close this off. And then we'll go in and inside of the protected section, we'll add in an attack timer. This is in the protected sections. We already have a timer. That timer is the patrol timer. So when it's patrolling, we're going to add another timer, which is going to be the attack timer. I'm just going to put this down here. So the attack timer, there's going to be 2 timers. And the reason why we need both is because, and there's different handles, is because one is for patrolling and the other one is for, I'm going to wait and then do the second attack and the third attack and the fourth attack, as long as I'm within range. The next, let's do some function declarations. One of them is going to be an attack and an attack end. We need those 2. So we have to put them here. And the other one that we're going to do is in the private section is start attack timer and clear attack timer. So that's down here. So I'll put them kind of further down. So again, why private and not protected? Anything that I don't want to share with blueprints, like these helper functions, we can keep local to the class, and we don't have to use the macro that attaches that function or property to the reflection system, which connects it to the Unreal Engine blueprint. You can keep some things, you know, kind of on the C++ side altogether. It actually is quicker because if you're not going to share anything, it's like there's less overhead with just doing this. Okay, so now that we have those, we should generate the definitions. Let's do that. Go back to the enemy, go here, and I'm just going to generate the definitions for those 4 things. And look where they went. They went into the wrong spot. Sometimes this happens with C++, where you generate them and they actually go inline, like that's in the .h. I don't want them here. So I can cut these out of here, and I can go back to the enemy and just put them at the bottom. We can get rid of inline, because that's just basically saying, like, you know, that was in the .h. That's what that inline means. And I just did it manually. So, I mean, again, you can just type these out too. You don't have to use the automatic, definition, for the functions, right? So that's what those are. Next, I want to, in the attack montage, I want to play the attack montage when we're attacking. So when I call the attack function, I'm going to play the attack montage. When I call the attack end, I want to change my enemy state to no state. So I want to stop the enemy state altogether. Because remember, we have an enemy state enum. To remind you about this, what that is, if I go to enemy state.h, you can see here that there are several states that we've defined for the enemy ahead of time. One of them is no state, where they're not doing anything, dead. When we kill them, well, we will do that over the next couple weeks. Patrolling, chasing, attacking, engaged, right? These are different things that the enemy can do that we've kind of defined here in the enum. Okay, so one of them is no state. And this is why when I'm finished attacking, I don't have a state. I'm not in a specific state or not, right? Then when I start the attack timer, so we're using the same attack timer code that we did before, right? Or the start timer code. We change the state of the enemy to attacking. So now they're in an attack state. We use the attack timer handle with this timer, and we're using the attack when the interval is done. So that means every 1.25 seconds, which is 1250 milliseconds, it's going to switch attacks to the next one. So it's going to wait a second and switch attacks. So why? Because the attack itself is going to take time to execute, right? And then a second later, it's going to do it again, right? It's going to keep doing it over and over again. It's going to keep looping these attacks, right? When it's done, it's going to actually do the attack. It's going to play the attack montage every interval. That's what it's doing, okay, with this thing. And then with the clear attack timer, we're just going to clear the timer based on the handle. So that means that the timer's going to be cleared. That means it's not going to continue to do this. So those are the little functions that we made that are here, you know, as an example that we're going to be using, you know, to set up the attack. Now that we have that, then let's update the on action radius overlap one more time. So if I go to on action radius overlap, here it is. What we had before was we cleared the timer and then we played the attack montage. This is very specific, playing attack montage. We want to use a timer to play the montage now. So instead, we're going to just start the attack timer and we're going to clear these two things off. We don't need this because it's going to switch to attacking state inside the timer. So start attack timer. That's what we want there. Okay. And that will start everything off so we can attack multiple times. Okay. We also want to know when the player has left the action radius, because if they've left it, we want to be able to chase the player. So we don't want to just like, oh, we keep attacking. It's going to attack into like the ether, right? So we're going to set up another little function here for that. So just like we have the on action radius overlap event, I'm going to put this underneath. What we want to do is we want to on action radius end overlap. We want two of them, right? So when this is the begin overlap and this is the end overlap. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to generate the definition. Well, that time it worked. And what we want to do there is we want to do a couple things with this. First of all, let's change the initialization in the enemy. We want to link it. So remember the initialize enemy method, what it does is it does all that binding for us, right? And we call initialize enemy inside of the begin play event, right? So begin play event, we don't want to pollute it with all this extra code, so we just compartmentalize these two things inside of their own functions, which is what we're doing here, compartmentalizing, right? So here, all I'm doing is I'm adding this line, and this line, what it does is it binds the default on component end overlap, which belongs to the sphere radius, right? We use iDynamic again to bind it to on action radius end overlap, that new function we just made. Once we've got that, let's define that function and let's talk about what this does. So here it is. So again, we do this. If the other actor exists, that's what we're saying. So the other actor that it's overlapping with, there's some other actor that it's overlapping with, that, you know, that is leaving. What we're testing here is something that's leaving your radius. The first one is something that's entering your radius. That's this part. This is something that's leaving your overlap. You're stopping overlap. You're not overlapping anymore. Well, whatever's leaving, if there's another actor that's leaving, yes, and the other actor that's leaving is not this. Somehow, it's not nothing to do with the actual enemy itself. We don't want to discount the enemy because it can detect itself, right? Then we say that can I cast the other actor as a main character, which is really asking the question, is the thing that's leaving the main character? That's really the question we're asking here. If it is, then do I want to go into a patrolling state? That's what it says right now. It says we're going to go into a patrolling state. Well, the character's left, so we can just go patrol again, right? For now, this is okay. But I'd rather, if it's leaving, I want to chase. That's what I want to do. For now, let's look at that. I'm going to clear the attack timer for now, and I'm going to check the patrol target so that I can start going to the next patrol area. All right, so that means if I leave somehow successfully, right, without being detected. So what this means is if somehow, I'm able to get away from from them, and they can't detect me when they swing around to see me to attack me, I'm not there anymore. Somehow they're just going to start patrolling. For now, this is okay, right? But later on, we're going to see that maybe we want to not do this. We want to basically say, okay, chase the player. Go to the player because they know where it is. Don't let the player get away, because if they leave the sphere, they've been detected already. It's not like they've disappeared into thin air or like in a puff of smoke or something like that. They're not a genie. They're an enemy. Like the character is the enemy for these guards, right? So we should continue to chase. But for now, this is okay to test. So again, save all and Control F5. And let's see how this works. So what we should see is, if everything worked out, then when we're in the radius, it should just keep attacking. It should just go attack, attack, attack. But now we're going to have another problem, like I mentioned earlier, as you're going to see. So we're dealing with one problem at a time. We're saying, okay, I want to attack multiple times. Great, but we're using root motion. And what root motion does is it moves the enemy. And it moves the enemy however many spaces that the animation moves them, right? So it could mean that the enemy will move right through the player or try to bump into the player or whatever, because it's just following the animation pattern. And again, this isn't very efficient, right? There's a lot of ways to mitigate this or change the behavior, but one thing at a time. So let's press play. So again, I pick up my weapon and I go over here. The enemy's detected me now, right? I'm going to run away somewhere over here so you can see it properly. And then it starts attacking. So boom, look and notice how I attacked, and it just keep going that way. It's going to keep going until it can't see me anymore, and then attack and attack and attack way over there. And then it goes back to me. So there it is. So here's something that can happen. If I move over here, as an example, and near a patrol target, and it attacks, and then I move away, way over here, and it starts coming back, once it goes into that patrol target, it could, if it doesn't see me, I'm still in its radius, it could potentially nab one of those patrol targets. Let's try this again. It's hard because the patrol target is me right now, right? So here I am, attack, attack, but then I'm gonna run away, and am I outside of its radius? Didn't quite make it, because you can see the radius is following me. So you see what I'm saying? The danger is that it might latch onto one of these patrol targets instead. Let's see if I can do it a different way. So he's going to come over here, or maybe way over here, maybe in this corner, and I'll get him to control, and then I'll run away from him. So he's going to attack me way over here. Let's see if he can actually goes off the board too. Look at that. He's almost off the board. Okay, so run away. And remember, I'm just going to run away here, so it's just far enough away so he doesn't see me anymore. He's still coming. And I'm going to go wrap around here. Oh, he's following me. Yeah, he's got me. And let's see if I can run away far enough that he sees a patrol target first. I just want to show you this issue. He doesn't see me. He could see a patrol target. And I can run away until potentially, I'll play ring around the rosy here until he sees another patrol target, and then in which case, what I'm hoping is he'll switch targets, because that's going to be the issue. right? So he doesn't do it yet, which is pretty good. I'm just lucky the way I positioned everything. Okay. But so this code, even though it says patrolling, realistically is when I'm leaving the overlap, I mean, realistically, I'm attacking. That clear attack timer and check patrol target, the patrol target is still me. It's still the character because that hasn't changed. And, um, if you look at what this says, if I go to definition for this one, check patrol target that's in the enemy basically says, hey, do I have a patrol target? If so, you know, go to when I wait for 2 seconds and then go to patrol timer finished. Patrol timer finished says move to target. Move to target in this case is me, right? So even though it says patrolling, as a state, realistically, it's going to go to me, right? Because, or the main character, because the main character is the patrol target. So therefore, again, there's some problematic things here that we put in here, but again, as a first end overlap, it will continue to chase us. It works the way we think it's going to work, but it's not perfect. Okay. Next part. So now that we have that really ready to work, we want to make it so that the same thing that we've done before with the notifies. We want to create an attack end to basically say that, hey, guess what, enemy? You're done attacking. You're finished attacking this one, and now you're going to try the next one. Okay, so we need to kind of notify this stuff because otherwise, the enemy has no idea when they're finished. We can't run that function. So let's do this inside the attack montage. So back to the attack montage. So if I go to the proper one, enemy animations montages, and double click on this one. By the way, couple things to note about the montage. Take a look at this. Things that you could fix. Look at this. So he's spinning around, spinning around. Look at that sword for a second, right? He's pretty good, and the sword doesn't go through the shield. Look at that. Oh, very close. But this, oh, right there, right there. See that? In this case, the second one, the sword goes right through the shield. So again, there's things you can do here, just like I showed you last time, to fix this problem. And not only that, but look at that shield, how it goes like through him. Like, look at that. So it goes like here, and it goes through his leg. The shield goes through his leg. The sword goes, through the shield and all that kind of stuff. And you can fix that by adjusting the shield placement in this animation so it doesn't look wonky. Okay, that's the only wonky one that I've seen so far. This one is different. This one here, when he jumps, let's just look at that one again. So he's jumping. So he's okay. He jumps up. He's in mid air, kind of thing. Which is it's a great little attack sequence. And then what happens is he jumps down, but look at his sword where it goes. It goes way over here, right? So that means he doesn't attack like straight on. He attacks like to the side. And look how his shield goes in his arm. So this is kind of weird. So it kind of goes up. Shield is inside of his arm. So again, things that we could change, right? Look at that. So his shield's in his arm right there, and then he comes down. Again, minor stuff you can't tell in the game. Like, it's too quick for you to tell, right? Potentially. But you do see that there's issues with the animations. And again, I'll leave these things for you to fix. You should be able to do that yourself, right? To see what this looks like. But what we want to do is in the notify, we want to do an attack end. So again, to add a notify, we go into the notify track here, and we right click, add notify, new notify, call this attack end. There it is. We can move this notify as close to the end as possible, right? Which is basically saying that when the enemy ends. So this is kind of thing. You can actually zoom in here. So control and middle mouse wheel. So you can move it closer to the end, right? Because you want to get it as close as possible. Again, you can right click and hold and move. So you can add that same notify. I want to grab that notify, right click, copy it, and then move in the same track right over here near the end of this one and paste it in. So you can see that that is near the end. Again, if you really want to be, kind of even more accurate, you can kind of right move in there and then get it right near the end of this thing. It's up to you if you want to go that crazy. You don't need to, though. And right at the end of this one, the third one, so bring that back out right here at the end. I'm going to paste. So there's the third notified there. So there's attack end 3 times. So we end the attack here for the first montage section. Second one, we end the attack here. Again, right near the end. That was way near the end. Look at that. Still inside of this animation, but right near the end, like the last frame, right, kind of thing. Again, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm going to move that in a little bit. And then those are the 3 notifications we made. So compile and save. Why do we do this? Because what we want to do is we want to, in the ABP, the Animation Blueprint Paladin, we want to, did I call it Paladin or Enemy? I may have called it Enemy. I did. I called it Enemy. But in here, you know, as an example, in the event graph, right now we only have this, which is just figuring out ground speed. But what we can do is we can say attack end. Here it is. Here's attack end. And what we also have is a reference to the enemy right here that I kind of created up there. We want to get an enemy, but we want to make it a validated get because we want to check to see if the enemy's been created yet, right? Reason for this is because it's order, right? Sometimes we don't have an enemy or the enemy's dead, right? Which means that like they don't actually live in the game anymore, right? And somehow this animation will try and play anyway, right? Kind of thing. So it just, that slight difference, it could cause a null reference exception. We don't want that to happen. So this is why we do this validation first. Does the enemy exist? Okay, well then the attack end triggers. And then we want to call the attack end function, right? So from the enemy. So if we say attack end, this is the function, right? And this is the thing that we defined in C++. So if you go here, we kind of made the attack end function, which is basically changes the enemy state to no state. That's what it does, okay? Keeping track of states. All right, very good. And this is going to become more apparent to you next week because it won't be able to attack until the attack's done. So it's not going to like go from one attack to the other to the other. It's not going to interrupt itself. You know, as an example, if I leave and come back and leave and come back, you know, into the radius, it won't look like wonky where it's going to try and do one of these, right? Because it'll start and stop the animation if I do that. All right, so that's the first thing that we did. We did this part, okay? And we can compile, save, and test. And if we do that now, grab the weapon, and you can see that you'll try to attack, and attack, and attack, and he'll come back to me and do it again. Attack, and attack, and attack, except he's really missing me badly, like way over there. And now, this is what I was talking about before. He's going to run, and he's running all the way to this patrol point, and that is what I wanted to show you, all right? That is like wonky bad, right? That's not what should happen, right? And so he did exactly what I was trying to replicate, you know, before. And he's running too. He's not even like in a walk state. He's not patrolling in a walk state. He's running because he sees those patrol points as, you know, the place he has to go. So that's an error, right? But that's what attack end does. It kind of makes it go into a no state, you know, kind of situation. One thing also that I noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed this, is the camera becomes wonky. So if he kind of comes at me and attacks, let's take a look at this. Right? So if he comes at me and, oh, he attacks me, look at that. He kind of like messes up my camera, right? Let's try that again. Look, watch. There it is. See that? It's almost like a glitch in the camera. Why? Because what's actually happening is he's actually going between me, like me, the player, and the character. And that's bad, right? Because what's happening is he is interposing himself with me and the camera. See if I can do that again. Oh yeah, all right, he's trying to go into the house. Woohoo, right? That's that's another glitch. Take a look at that. He's climbed on top of the you know, of these things, and because he's off the nav mesh, he's also messed up. He doesn't know what to do, right? So we can make these unclimbable, like, you know, that kind of stuff. We can make it so that you can't get on these things. But that's what happens. So to clean that up, so to not have this effect, let me show you that one more time. Right, so you can see the issues here. So once he comes at me, watch this again. There, see how that thing, what he did, we can clean up the way the camera works for us. So in the main character, so if we bring up the main character again, so character, main character, right? What we want to do is we want to go to the camera boom itself, and the camera boom, if we look at collision, right? The camera collision does a test, and it does it on the camera probe channel. That is the camera that is working, right? So that's what's happening there. Same thing with, well, the camera doesn't have a probe channel, but the camera boom does. And the camera boom basically uses the probe channel to do the collision test. That's what it does. So that it kind of goes in and out. It kind of moves the camera when it hits like a wall. It kind of moves your, the camera for the player. And to show you this one more time, if I go over to a wall here and I move my camera, my player camera, if I kind of orbit inside, notice how the camera, the boom arm comes closer, so I can see I kind of move towards my player, right? By the way, you may not like the position of the camera. You can always move it higher so it sees his head instead of the player's ass, right? But that's what happens. It goes inside this kind of this wall, and then it kind of does one of these, right? This is okay for a wall because I don't want to look inside necessarily. I don't want to clip inside of a wall. That's kind of a cheat in some games, right? Corners are weird because if I go here, again, sometimes I got this situation happening, right? And the problem with the enemy is that he does the same thing. So what I can do is the enemy. So if I go back to the enemy's there's two things that does this: the mesh and also the action radius. So the action radius, as an example, or the capsule component. That's the one I want to use. Capsule component. If I scroll down and if I go to collision, right? So the capsule component, notice it says camera, the camera channel, it blocks. That means if I kind of intersect with an enemy, my camera is going to zoom into my face, right? Which is momentarily going to make me blind, right? That's not good. So I'm going to change this from custom. I'm going to go to from a camera perspective, and we're just going to say ignore. Right? So that's the capsule. Same thing with the mesh. So here's the mesh. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go to custom, and I'm going to ignore the camera. So the camera is another channel I don't care about, right, for the enemy. What this means is when I fight the enemy now, and if I go here and fight him, right now, no matter what he does, even if he gets in the middle of my camera and me, I don't see any weird effect. He'll come right at my camera, but I won't see any effect. So there's an example of where he just like lost me, and I'm until I go into his view again, he won't do anything about me until he sees me again, which is kind of weird. Okay, so that is some fixes that I made. But let's talk about improving the attack with motion warping. Let's put this up on DevOps too, because what we've done is we made it so the enemy can attack. We've kind of added in the notify. So we're going to go back to File, Save All, and I'm going to go View, and I'm going to go Terminal, and we're going to just do another commit, get that dot. And what we really did here, if you think about it, was we did a few fixes, right, to the enemy attack. So kind of like added an attack timer is what we really did, so that it keeps attacking over and over again. So added enemy attack timer, but we also messed up some other stuff. Okay, and when it's done, we'll make it push. There we go. Okay, so back to this. So now that we have that, I want to add motion warping, and I want to talk about what this does. Okay, so really, I've given you some documentation to help you understand what this does. One thing is we need to add in this plugin, right? And the plugin for motion warping, it says experimental, but it works pretty good. So let's do that first. So if I'm going to go to Unreal Engine, I'm going to go to plugins here, and I'm going to search for motion. And you can see that animation warping is here, but we want to do motion warping. Now, it was experimental when I did this last time, but now it's in beta, which is pretty good. So you can see it's not going to be experimental forever. I'm going to click onto this. When I click onto this, it says, hey, it's beta. Are you sure? I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to say, you better restart your editor, right? By the way, if I also just type in warp, there are a few things, right? Warp utils, that's one of them. That's in beta. There's also animation warping, right? So pose warping. So stride orientation and slope warping alongside the root motion delta animation attribute. All right, so it does other things we have as well. So other things that we can add in, we only need this part, motion warping, but there are other ones as well. And again, you can always check to see what they do. So if you actually look at the website for this, it should lead you to Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals. No, that's not what I meant. And arc raiders. No, that's not what I wanted to do either. I wanted to basically say like, hey, is it going to give you the information for this one? And that's what it should do. Not the Epic Games. It should actually go to what I was hoping it was going to take us to the documentation, but it doesn't. But motion warping is turned on, which means we have to restart our editor. We're going to do that in a second. Motion warping is a module. When you do this, when you code this for your in-class exercise 10, you need to add the motion warping module in order for it to work for you. Okay, otherwise it won't work. All right, so now we're back. We've added in motion warping, and let's go back to the enemy. We'll kill the blueprint for now, and we'll go back to this dude here. So a couple things that we need here to enable motion warping. First thing we need to do is add the component. So back to the enemy, I'm going to click add. And if I look at motion, you can see motion warping is a thing. So there it is, motion warping. I'm just going to leave it at motion warping. And notice that it doesn't have a visible thing. Neither does pond sensing. Pond sensing is in this other section like I talked about before. This area where it exists with character movement. So character movement, motion warping, pond sensing, they are non-visual. There's no user interface related to them, but they're components that we're adding in to the component tab. Okay, compile save. So that's the motion warping. Once we have this, then what we want to do in our animation montage is add a new track. Okay, so let's do a couple things actually. Let's do some cleanup. So back to the animation montage, right? The animation montage has track 1. That doesn't really mean anything. So what you can do with tracks and notify tracks is you can rename them. So right click, if I go to here, if I go to kind of click once and click again, you can see that this will be the attack end track. That's only for attack end notifies. You can add in another track. Here's another notify track. You can have as many notify tracks as you want. And this one will be called, for the attack end, we'll make this track called translation warping. There's two types of warping we want to do. One of them is translation warping, and the other one is rotation warping. So translation warping means where I'm moving to, location. I'm actually warping the location I'm going to go to. And the other one is going to be the rotation. I'm changing my angular velocity. So instead of as an example, pointing in space, I'm going to point at the character. I want to move towards the character every single time, right? Now, I have to warn you that this could be super hard to dodge, right? Because what you're doing is you're actually physically warping the location of where the enemy is going to move with root motion. All right, so this is kind of like, it can create a very challenging thing. And we'll talk about how to mitigate this, make it less challenging, or even more challenging, like impossible to dodge, like where the enemy will always hit you every single time. All right, so that's the first thing. So once we've added that in, we want to, add a notify state this time. So instead of a notify track, right, translation warping is a notify state. So where we want to add it in, if I go back to the scrubbing tool for a second, let me just look at this guy here, all right? And it's really during his attack. So his motion, this is the motion. Look at that little motion graph that we have here, right? So he starts off here, right? And what's happening is when he's here, from here to here, right? This motion that we're talking about is where we want to move him. So instead of him moving straight in, he's going to move towards the character in this thing. So from basically from here to here, okay? Just like that little attack part, this part, okay? So we want to start the thing probably around here, okay? So right where he is starting to his attack sequence, right there, like, kind of up in the air, like, his 1 foot's off the ground kind of stuff. He's moving towards the player, and then instead of stepping forward, this is where this is going to be. So I'm going to go back to the translation warping track, right click, and I'm going to add a new notify state, and we're going to use motion warping. That is going to only appear when we add in the plugin. So click motion warping. Motion warping is going to look pretty small, and what we can do is we can extend this track until he's finished his attack. So something like this. This is where he's going to finish that. So we're going to make this pretty small, something like that. Okay, that's what that's going to be in there. All right, so again, look from here. It starts from here and it goes to here. So wherever he's finished doing, that's where he's going to stop translating. Okay, right here. Okay, this part is, we don't care about what he's looking at this point because he's already finished attacking at this point. Okay, so about right here. And now we need to configure this a little bit. So on the right, you can see that there is a config area, and there's different kinds of things that he can do. So the root motion modifier, there's skew warp, there's scale, so I can change the scale too, like size and so on. But skew warp is what I want to do. The warp target name is something that we're going to give. We're going to kind of, almost like a tag that we're going to use. And if you look here, right, this is the first part. The second part is this. We're going to call this the translation target. We're going to use this later on for information. So we're going to call this translation target. Again, this is just a tag that we're going to reuse later on to identify the type of motion warping we're doing. Okay, translation target. And then warp point anim provider is none. We could have something else to help us do this translation, but we do want to do the rotation type as facing. So wherever they're facing, that's going to change we're going to keep facing. So in other words, we're not going to just move ourselves closer to the right or left by face straight on. We're going to actually face the place where we're warping to. All right. So again, here instead of default type is default or rotation type is default, we're going to use facing. So this is actually going to change the facing of the character as well. Okay. So that's the first part. Okay. So that's the first part. And what we want to do is we want to copy this for each section. So we're going to, it's going to look like this. Okay, let's do this. So we're going to say here is motion warping. We're going to right click. We're going to copy this one. And then we're going to move it over here to this next one. So again, let's think about where this is going to go. So he starts off like this. And then once he starts moving, once he takes that step, he starts spinning. I want to kind of do it probably here at this point. So this is where I'm going to paste that in. Paste, right? And he's going to finish right here. So maybe about this point. So I want to kind of move him. Again, this is going to move him forward, right? So where is he going to move? Where he steps. When he steps down at his foot, this step right here is where he's going to do. Right here when he's finished attacking. So I can kind of make this tighter. Move this in like this. Because after that, I don't want to move. The bigger this is, the larger this is. Like if you make this like the entire animation, I mean, literally this thing will, like, he'll look like he's flying because it's like, I'm going to translate him. I'm going to move him around, based on where the target is, right? So that's what this is. Let's look at the next one. So the next one is going to be interesting because he's going to be translating here too. Like example, I'm behind him, right? And he is just leaping up. And as he leaves the ground from about right here, this is where I want to start changing his direction in his stuff. So right about here, right when he's leaving the ground. So about right here, I'm going to right click here and paste. And then what I want him to do is when he's jumping, he's going to, like, do I want him to spin in midair and come down, like right here? So when he lands, so that's a big one. Now, warning, this can look pretty wonky, right? So imagine he's starting to change his direction, right? That's what, or his location. He's moving towards the player, right? He hasn't spun towards the player. He's just moving towards the player here. And then, he's in midair and he's going to come down and there. So this is kind of where he's going to kind of spin. So it's a bit of a longer one. You're going to see how this, we may want to change this one a little bit because it looks so weird. So from here all the way here. Notice also how motion warping, it kind of colors in the graph. So it shows you where the motion warping is going to work, right? It's a big warp that we're doing here for this one. And that's why I chose this animation to show you different options here. All right, so now that we've done motion warping, the next part is we want to have another notify track and name it update translation target. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So another animation track, add notify track. And what we're going to do here is I want to add in the update translation target. I want to do that. The more we do this, here's something else I want to notice. When we have a translation target here, okay, at the beginning of the motion warping. So let's suppose I get a bead on you. I get a lock on the character, right, with my sword. But the character moves between here and here, right? If the character moves between here and here, that means wherever the character was is where I'm attacking. That's what this is doing. It's moving to where the character was, right? But what I can do is I can update the translation target a bunch of times. Now, the more I do this, the more I'm going to move towards the player, the more difficult this is going to be to avoid. So I want to do something like this. So halfway through, let's just, zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about, right? And I'll bring this guy back to Earth so you can see him. So like over here. So halfway through the motion warping, like here, right? About here, right? Do I want to add another notify to let the enemy know that the player's moved now, instead of where I was, to over here, even more accurate? So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to kind of do right here. I'm going to add a new notify, and I'm going to put that in. So this is the update translation target here, okay? So I can put in as many of these as one. For example, well, what if I move at this point, right? Well, I can put another one there. What if I move at this point? Well, I can put another one there. And the more I put in there, more of these, I'm updating at different points. I'm going to make it so that it's more and more difficult for you to avoid getting out of the way. I want to do the same thing for my other animation, the second one. So again, I want you to think about what this is going to do, right? So I'm here. I'm just starting the root motion. I'm moving. And maybe around here, he moved out of the way, the player. So I want to kind of make it so it's tough for him to move out of the way. So I'm going to kind of copy that notify right here. Paste. Okay. And the same thing goes with this one. So I'm moving. And the character moved. This is where it's going to be weird and wonky. In the middle of my jump, kind of thing, I'm going to fly at the player, right? Kind of thing, right? I'm going to fly at them. So again, I'm going to kind of paste it there. All right, so you can see what that is. So it's going to be like this, and he's going to be right towards the player, right? And then again, I could put another one there, so even if I'm midair here, I can get him too. Okay, but we're only going to put one, and you're going to see this is probably even going to be too much. All right, and so that's the second one. So the second one is that we want to update the translation target. All right. All right. Next, we want to add another motion warping. So I'm going to call this new track the rotation warping part. This is what I was talking about. So now there's one is movement, where locomotion, where the enemy is going to move to, and the next one is how they're going to look at you, right, to attack, right? So it's going to make a huge thing. Okay, let's go back to that. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to add in a new notify track. I'm going to call this rotation warping, right? And just like we did before, I want to match my this thing here that I have, this is important to match. So wherever I'm moving, I'm also going to rotate towards, right? So I want to right click and I'm going to add in, and you'll notify state motion warping, right? And I want to try and match up, again, it's easy for me to do it this way. So if I kind of match up this all the way to this, approximately. So this is motion warping. So these should be pretty much the same size. So this one, right? If I look at it here on the right, so the warp target name is going to be the rotation target, right? That's what it's going to be, right? Okay, rotation target. I'm not going to translate anymore. Okay, I'm not going to translate, but I am going to face. So I definitely want to move this to face. So I'm only rotating. That's all I'm doing, rotating, but not translating. Okay, so two of these things happening at the same time. One is rotation, and the other one is translation. Okay, so both those two things. By the way, notice that there's also a graph component here, and you can also change some of these things. If I go back to my motion warping, the warp translation, I can change the type of graph. How smooth I want it to be, or how rough I want it to look. This is pretty rough because this will go from the beginning to the end, where this one will be like, kind of a smooth in and out, right? As an example, and so on. We can try some of these different curves, and you can also make a custom curve if you want the animation to look a certain way when it blends from one location to the other. It's fully up to you. Okay, it's lots of opportunities to change stuff, right? The other thing that they have here, just to note, is the warp rotation time multiplier. You can slow it down, just like things that you can do. The rotation method, right? You can make it a constant rotation rate. You can make it a slurp, which is an interpolation. So basically, it's a spline interpolation is what the slurp is. Or you can make a spline interpolation with a clamp rate. So it can't go faster than a certain point. So if you want to change, because this is the rotation that it's going to do. All right. So I want to take this same thing. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to go over here to my motion warping and paste it. And again, what I want to do here is match the size and when this thing ends. So that way it's approximately the same as, all these things. This is quite large, so we're just going to put this in place here. So I want it to snap right here. So paste. All I'm doing is copy pasting. And I want to kind of do this so that it does, you can see that it kind of in place, it kind of does the same thing right there. So this is translation warping, rotation warping. Okay. Save. I also need another track. And this one is going to be, this track I'm going to use for the update rotation target, just like we've done before. So similar to what we did before, I can add in a notify, right? Here's the notify. And again, I can make this happen several times, but I want to kind of align it with the other one. So kind of like right here, add notify, new notify, update rotation target. And again, I would do that because if the target moves out of the way, like that means the player, then I want to make it so that, let me just copy paste here. Sorry, copy and go over here and paste it in. So both the rotation target and the translation target is updated at the same time. Again, I can do this multiple times. The more times I do it, the more accurate the enemy is going to move towards the player, which is maybe not what we want. It's too accurate, like right there. Okay. So those are the the 4 tracks we've added at this point. Just going to show you what that looks like, kind of like in a bigger view. There we go. So that kind of is what we're looking at right now. Okay, you should have something like this. Save all. All right, so now that we've done these tracks, we have some work to do, right? So in order for us to do that, we need a couple of functions. And we'll talk about what this does now. So let's like File, Save All, close down the editor, and then go into the enemy.h. So again, we could do this also in blueprints if you really wanted to, but it makes sense since we've been doing some stuff in C++, and later on I'm going to get you to do it, that some of this stuff are things that I'm going to get you to do. Okay, so back to this. I'm going to add that in here. And here I've added in a couple of things here. I've added in the combat target. So what, that's the target, the translation target, if you will, right? The other one is the warp target distance. So this is going to be like how far I want to change. This is going to give me a bit of a clamp. So I don't want to go that far. So I want to kind of be within 75 units, centimeters. The other one is I've got two, kind of functions I'm going to use with my notifies. All right, that's what this is going to be. So let's do that now. So I'm going to go and add these two functions in place. So again, I'm going to go here and go to generate definitions. Yay, here they are. And those two definitions, the first one is going to be this. We'll talk about this in a second while I copy it in. Again, I could hand bomb all this for you, but it's just faster to do it this way, I think, and a little bit less error prone as I've tested all this out. I will talk about it though. So let's talk about the first one. So the first one is this. So do you have a combat target? That's number one. If not, then return empty. There is nothing you're going to go towards because you don't have a combat target. Okay. So the return vector is going to be the empty vector, which is 0, 0, 0, right? That's the location of the empty target, right? Because this returns a vector, the vector that you're going to be going to, all right? Next, if we get by this line 118, that means that we do have a combat target. So the combat target location is the combat target, which is an actor, any actor that it's attacking, get actor location. This is going to give us our vector that we want, right? Or the position of the actor that we're going to attack, right? And then the location is going to be the actor location. So the current location, this location is the location of the enemy. So this is the actor location. The target direction is going to be, we're going to be using, we're going to basically subtract the target from the source, right? So again, the target is going to be the combat target location, and we're going to subtract it so that we're going to have a normalized line, a direction that we're traveling in. And we're going to use get safe normal because what this is going to, it's going to normalize it. So it's going to make the unit vector is what we're going to return here and store here. So it's just a direction vector. It's not going to be the entire vector that we're going to move. Once we have the target direction, we're going to multiply it by the warp distance. So that's 75 units. So we're only going to move 75 units or centimeters in the direction that we want to go towards every single time. The bigger the warp distance, the crazier it will look. Like we can actually change this number so like he flies through the air to get to you, kind of thing. And we don't want this. Then the combat target plus the target direction, right? It's combat target location, which is where the target is, plus the target direction is what we're going to add together to give me the total vector that we're going to return for the translation warp target. So this is where I want the enemy to go to when they're translating. Similarly, the rotation warp target is, again, check to see if I've got a combat target. If I do, then I want to return the actor location, right? And otherwise, I'm returning an empty vector. So kind of similar to this, right? But the other way around. Check to see if I've got a target and return something. Otherwise, return nothing. That's what the two functions do. All right, so that's the next part. So that's the first part that we've kind of put together. Then in the player detected function, so that's in the player detected function, which we've had for a while. Let's just jump there. Player detected. we have our clear patrol timer, and all we're going to do is under the patrol target, we're going to make the combat target the main character. This is when the player is detected. So patrol target, that's where we're moving to. We're walking towards them or running towards them. Combat target is, okay, this is where I'm going to try and attack when I'm close enough. So combat target is equal to main character. There we go. Okay. And that's this one. So let's try this out. So again, make sure that the editor is closed, save all, Control F5. And let's see how this looks so far. It's not going to do anything yet. All right, one thing at a time. So first, we make the functions. Now, in the animation blueprint, when this thing launches, we're listening for the notifies. And when the notify basically says update the translation target, we're going to call these functions here so that they update the translation target for where the combat target is. We're going to kind of find their position. Again, the more often we do this, the more 75 units it's going to move around, right, and rotate towards the player, which again can look, it's going to be really hard to dodge, right, as you'll see, especially when you have more than one enemy, which we will, right? So let's go back to this and see what happens. What did we do? We do not want this to happen. There we go. That was a mistake. Luckily I caught that. All right, we can close this off now. So let's take a look at the, I'm just going to come back to this. Let's take a look at the animation blueprint now. So the animation blueprint, that's for the character. Let's look at for the animation blueprint for the enemy. Here's the animation blueprint. Right now, the only notify we get is the attack and notify, but we're going to add more here. So what we want is we want two more, update translation target and update rotation target. So let's do that. So we'll say update translation target. That's a new thing we want to respond to. And then update rotation target. So those two things. So again, for this, we want to get a validated get. I'm just going to copy this from this one of the enemy. Okay, here's the validated get of the enemy. What we want to do over here is we want to call this new function. So again, the new functions are get translation warp target. All right, but we also want to get the motion warping component from the enemy as well. All right, so let's do both. So get translation warp target first. Get translation warp target. And then this one will be get rotation warp target. That's from the C++ function, right? So this is, it returns a vector, like you see here. We can do this differently, but we also want to get motion warping, right? We want to get a reference to the motion warping component, right? Get motion warping. And the motion warping component has a special function that's add or update. Add or update target, warp target from location. Okay, that's what this does. And we can connect these two things. So we have the vector that we want to connect, and the warp target name is going to be the translation target, right, for this one, like we've said before. Translation target. Okay. Similarly, we can do the same thing. Copy this little node, and this will be the rotation target. There we go, rotation target. We'll copy this in there, and we'll do this over here, and we'll connect these two things here. So just going to move these down a little bit so you see them. I'll make this window a little bit closer and this one a little bit smaller so you can see what these are. So let's go through this. So when the anime is triggered, the anim notify, right? So update translation target is going to trigger in the middle of the warping, all right? It's going to get a reference to the enemy, and from the enemy, it's going to get the translation warp target based on, do I have a combat target or not? Whatever that combat target is, it's going to return a normalized, kind of direction of where I'm going to go to, right? And I'm going to use motion warping to add or update the warp target from location, and the location being 75 units kind of in the direction of the target. That's where it's going to be. And it's the warp target name. This is the important part. This is what links this little tag links the links into the animation that we want to use. Okay. Same thing here. When we anim notify, we're going to use the enemy to get the rotation warp target. So that's like, again, where the character's location is. And we're going to pass that location in, and we're going to use this as the rotation target. Okay. So both of those two things are working in tandem. And what this is going to help us do is we're going to help us get towards where the player is going to be. Okay. Compile and save. So again, this is the next part. So what does this do? Does it do it yet? Is the question. The answer is no, not yet. Let me show you. So let's test it to see if nothing's broken. That's what I'm testing for. So again, I'm kind of going towards it. And if I grab my weapon and player, he attacks me, you're going to see that it's going to go by me again. See? Oh, look at that. It kind of snapped to the middle, right? So it kind of works a little bit better than before. Actually, too well. Look at that. Like snaps right to me. Woohoo, right? And like jumps like way where it's supposed to not jump. Look, like way over there. And so it kind of works wonky right now, like I said, but it's going to get better. So as I get closer, then it's kind of weird, right? But it does. But it's way more accurate than it was. And it kind of jumps into place. Because why? We're passing in a 0, 0 vector, right? So if I run away from him way over here, watch what's going to happen when he tries to attack me. If I'm way over here, watch what he's going to do, right? They're not quite complete yet with what we're doing, right? So here he attacks me and he goes all the way back to the end and goes back. Why? Because what we've said in our code is this. We've said when we update, the two targets, right? So update translation target and update rotation target, which is, here it is, get translation warp target. What it's really doing is it's saying, okay, so do I have a combat target? No. So that means I've moved away from them, right? And because my combat target, I moved away, it's like a random target, right? Then it's null pointer, and it's going to return the empty vector, which is 0, 0, 0. That's the world origin, right? That's bad, right? And the same thing goes with the rotation target. It's going to return 0, 0, 0 because I'm too far away. So we're not quite done. This is getting there, but we're not there yet. Okay. Next, so we want to make it a lot smoother and for the enemy, and we're going to use this for the calculation. Let's try this out, and we're going to fix some stuff too in a second. So in the event tick, the translation warp target, we're going to get this a bunch of times. So instead of us adding a bunch of targets in there, we're going to get the translation target every frame, right? So this way, it's going to make it so that we don't lose the target as often. Now, this is tricky, and like I said, this might be too good. Okay, let's try it out and see what happens. So again, going back to the enemy blueprint, here it is. Then what I want to do here, is I want to get the combat target, right? Whatever that is. And when I have a combat target, I want to pass this combat target in, right? So the translation target. So notice that this is like, there's no connection here. Let's go back to that. So first what I want to do is, do I have a combat target? So get combat target. And what I want to do is I want to use a validated get. So what this is really doing is basically doing a check. It's basically saying, is the combat target, does it exist? Yes or no? And if it does exist, we don't care about what this is. We just know that it's there. We know that the combat target exists. It's almost like saying, is it valid? Is it null pointer? Is it not null pointer? If it's valid, that's what this part is. Then we want to get the translation. Get translation warp target, okay? And the translation warp target, what we're going to do is we're going to use add or update warp target from location for motion warping. So we're going to get motion warping in here and add or update warp target from location. We're going to do that every frame. Okay, this is a lot more intense. We don't have to use this, all right? And then the target would be, again, translation target. Let's try this out here. Okay. And the same thing goes with the get rotation warp target. So here, get rotation warp target. Oh. And just like we did before, I want to get the motion warping in this part. Copy paste. And what we want to do here is we want to use this, and this will be the translation warp target here. And this is going to happen every frame. Let's see what the difference is between what we just did before and what we have now. And there's fixes too we can implement, right? But this is the first kind of kick at the can, if you will, at translation warp target. So again, if I pick up the sword now, I'm close enough. The enemy detects me, and let's see how crazy it is when it comes to attacking me. So, okay. Boom. Right? Boom. And it loses me, because remember that same problem still exists. It still finds the other target. But once it finds me, it's going to be really deadly accurate, right? In getting to me where it is. And it's not going to snap anymore to that other location, right? Take a look, right? It's got to be within range for it to come closer. And it's just really super deadly accurate. Like it's going to get me every single time. Look at that. No matter how much I turn, no matter what I do, right? As long as it has me in its sights, it's going to try and it can attack me every single time. I can keep running away, but there's going to be a point where I can't run away anymore. And it's going to attack. Even if I jump around, it's going to be able to find me and attack me, even if I try and do this kind of weirdness that I'm trying to do now. So it's really accurate. Look at that. Like super accurate now. So some things we can mitigate. This is happening every frame. We can slow it down. We can give it a delay. Other things that we can do, again, maybe it's too good, is the return vector. Right now, the return vector, we're not tracking where the enemy was. Like that's the character. We could track the last known location of the character. So instead of it returning the 000 mark, it's going to go and attack that last known location, whatever that was, which is much closer than 000, which is like in the middle of nowhere. That's what this does, right? The other thing to note is the get translation warp target. It's only going to work. It should only work when there's a valid combat target, right? It's not just what we had before. So ways to fix this would be inside the animation blueprint. And I know I'm running out of time here, but there is a piece that I want to talk about for you guys. In the animation blueprint, we're not checking for that. We're checking to see if the enemy is valid, but we're not checking to see if it has a valid target. So again, what we could do is we can interpose here in the middle. We can kind of say, once I have a valid enemy, do I have a valid target? So we can say, get combat target. And we can do that same check. We can say that we need to do both. We have to have a valid enemy, and we can do a validation check, convert to validated get, which is going to interpose this here. Now it becomes a little bit skewed, but I want you to see what I'm doing here. All right, so again, we're going to do one of these. There's another check we can make here to make it even better. The combat target, we don't care about what it is. We just need to have a valid one. And once we have that combat target, then we're going to do this motion warping stuff. So we can just kind of change the way these look, just so that way they're not completely messed up. There we go. So it kind of looks like this. Again, we can make a little function too. Like, I've not compartmentalized this by any means, but I could do this. And this is not a bad idea, because what this is doing is it's checking to see, do I have a valid target? Don't even try and do translation warping or whatever until I have a valid target. If I don't have a valid target, if it's out of the way, then they do nothing, right? Because we don't want to jump in the middle of nowhere. We don't want to try and do the rotation warping or the translation warping unless we have a valid target. So that's what this does. Otherwise, you get that weird thing that happens, which is you're going to jump into the middle of the screen. Okay. So that is definitely something we can improve on. All right. I haven't put this in the PowerPoint, but well, what's happening here? Oh yeah, I need this little line here. Oh, file and save. And let's try it this way. And what we'll do is just to show you this, I'll just disconnect this right here for now. And this is the old way. So what I did first, let me explain what I'm doing here one more time. So this is doing it with notifies. Okay. So this is the notify way. So let's see what happens when I notify him once. So he's going to attack me, and then can I run away? Right? I might be able to, but see how he like jumps right at me? Look at that. Still not quite right. See how he translates way over there, and he missed me, but he like blew in there like really really quickly, right? And why? Because when I call the translation target in the notify, right? That's what it was. So I can adjust the notify in the animation so that he doesn't do that. So he's attacking, and then he attacks me, and it's kind of wonky. That's using the notifies from the animation. That's the one way of doing it. Okay. Okay. But here's another way. So if I go back to this, what if I disconnect these? So I don't do these at all, right? And what if, file and save. What if I just do this? So I do this every frame. Is this going to work? Or do I need the notifies, right? So again, I'm here, he detects me, and then he starts attacking. And take a look at this one. So I don't have to do both, right? And to me, every frame, or with a delay, seems to work better. Take a look at that. At least it's not as wonky as the notifies, but both ways are possible. That's the idea here, okay? So I can run away, but when I'm close enough, he's going to basically like cut my head off or whatever. And there's nothing I can do to get away. It's really challenging. Again, adding in a delay in here is perfectly fine, okay? So for example, between the enable view and here, we can add in a delay of like 0.2 seconds. Don't check, as an example, every frame, because every frame is too much. And if we did that, again, we're just playing around here, but let's just do that, say delay, and we'll add in a delay of 0.2 seconds. So this is how often they do the translation target. The more the delay, the worse the enemy is at attacking the player, right? So this is like lower level enemies where you can add more of a delay. They're not great at hitting you. So here it is. So he's attacking. He attacks me once, but now, he may not be as good at hitting, right? I can get away from him a little bit more, right? And, even 0.2 you can see is still challenging, right? And if I do it again, let's add a delay here. Instead of checking every frame, 0.5 seconds, it's like whole 500 milliseconds, so like way worse than before. Let's see if it's wonkier, if it's the same, if it's better, like what happens. So again, he has me as a target, and it actually looks like I can totally get away now, right? Because he's attacking where I was, and then he loses me, right? And now he's kind of lost, right? Depending on where I am. So there I am. Still can jump right at me though. It's like really far. Like if I'm going right at me. So it's almost like you got to find the target that he translates is pretty crazy, right? So that's why the anim is pretty good, the animation, because you want to do this is happening all the time. Like as soon as you turn it on for that frame that he's attacking me, he's going to like track me wherever I am, right? And so that's what this does, right? So delay, yeah, you can put it in, but this does it as frequently as it can. So there is a value, all I'm saying is there is a value in doing it this way, okay? Where we're doing it with the anim notify, and we turn off the frame-based, kind of like warp translation and rotation translation. Okay, so we turn that off, right, in that way. But again, what you need to do is play around with the animation, the anim montage to kind of figure out when you want to start tracking and when you want to stop tracking. So very, very short areas of tracking, of translation warping, kind of thing. Because otherwise it's going to like look wonky again, right? But having this is really important, which is, you don't want to be able to, um, sorry, and the combat target has to be valid. Both of those two things, the enemy has to be valid and the combat target has to be valid before you do any of this translation warping stuff. Okay, so that is the lesson here. I'm going to connect all of them, and you're going to see what's going to happen is you get the best effect, I find, when you connect everything together. So when everything's connected, then you get a really tough enemy to fight in this case. So again, if you notice here is the enemy, right? So he lost me, but he's going after me because I ran away. And then it's kind of like more accurate, and I can't really run away before he gets to me. Okay, really, really tough enemy to fight. But I can still lose him. I can still run around, grab my sword, and maybe even attack him sometimes. Next week, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be speeding up our little animation. Because another thing we can do is we can also slow some of these animations down. So before he starts doing certain things, he'll be a lot slower. That's another way of really changing his almost like quote unquote the combat enemy's level. Because if you look at the anim montage, let's go back to that, right? The anim montage has other factors here that we should also note. For example, we have the blending, but here's the rate scale. So if you hover over a rate scale, from a pop-up, it says the number of tweaking playback rate for this animation globally. So this is like kind of how fast it goes, right? So if I turn this down to something like 0.1, like really stupidly slow, right? And if I kind of start it off, and if I go here, let's see what happens now. Like it'll look dumb, right? But, right, look. So he's going there and he's just like super slow. Look at him. He doesn't finish before he's done. Look at that. And then he's going to translate. Like you see what it does. It translates way over here. Like, so he's doing that over here and then slows him down. And right? That's what it kind of does. That's what it does. So it doesn't really make sense to slow him down that much. So that's 0.1. That's the rate scale of the animation montage. So again, you can adjust this so it's not as fast. You can adjust it so that it's faster. You don't want that. Like imagine if this is like 2, right? That's the alternative. I'm being really extreme here, but you can see the difference. He's just gonna like attack like crazy man, right? Like when he starts attacking, he's gonna attack and attack like really fast, like poof, nothing you can do there. Like it's like it's silly. It's like it's like a cartoon, right? It's like dirt, right? Oh, pretty snappy though, like a lot this like a much snappier kind of like thing to look at, right? So he'll sit there and he'll just keep attacking this guy over and over again until it's like it's done, right? So again, don't want to do that with the animation montage, but this allows you some control. You can also do individual um, animations as well, so each animation has their own rate. If you want to tweak the rate of the animation because it's too fast or too slow, as an example, you can do that here as well. All right, so that's something that you can do instead of overall tweaking everything, the same way. All right, so that is your thing. Now, for what I need you to do, first of all, let's put this up on DevOps. So you have this, so save all. And now there's a you to do part. So you do this part with me, and then I'm gonna do you terminal. Hopefully you'll get what I'm doing here. I want you to convert this to C++. So the little line that we have in the tick function, so we'll say that we added motion warping to enemy attack, and we'll push. Okay, let's go back to that. So for you to do, right, in class exercise 10. I want you to convert the code in the event tick of BP enemy to C++. So how do we do that? And I want to talk about it before I let you guys go. So let's take a look here. So if I want you to convert this stuff right here, this stuff, that's everything, including the enabled debug view. I want you to take all of this and I want you to put all this in C++. Now there's some issues, okay, that I want to talk about. One issue, motion warping is a component that we've added in on the blueprint side. If you add a component on the blueprint side, C++ knows nothing about it. This is like, there's no communication between the blueprint back to C++. It's the other way around. It's from C++ to the blueprint. It's a one-way direction, right, in terms of communication by default. And I mean that by default because we don't really have, kind of another way of communicating directly with from blueprint back to C++ the way it is. I mean, you could make other constructs to do it, but for now there isn't. So motion warping, this component needs to be added in on the C++ side. Well, if we do that, we need to add in the motion warping module, right? Just place that after the AI module. And that means you need to rebuild, your project again from scratch. That means like you have to, tear it down and manually do all the process or, kind of compile and save and all that stuff. Once you have that, then in the enemy.h, you want to do a forward declaration for U motion warping component because we're going to add in the component. Let's just rename it to motion warp. So instead of it being motion warping, we'll keep this for a second, but we'll make a new one, motion warp, okay? One thing to note is you can only have one of these. So once you add in the new one, it'll mess up the other one. It won't work properly until you get rid of one, all right? Next, what we want to include in the enemy CPP is the motion warping component.h. This will be read, it won't work properly until you add the motion warping modules, just as a reminder. Then in the constructor function, we need to create a default subobject of U motion warping component and assign it to the motion warp property. Let's even call it motion warp. So what that would look like if you were looking at the current C++ stuff, and if you went to the constructor function of the enemy, something like this. Text and in quotations motion warp, whatever you want this thing to appear. Okay, so that's going to be added in here, somewhere at the bottom of the constructor function. Once we have that in the constructor function and we've added in the motion warping, we've kind of created the motion warp property, then in the tick function we need to call the enable debug view and pass in true. So again, what we're replacing here, going back to this, is this part. We're replacing this. So we're just calling the function. The function already exists in C++, so we can call it like that. Next, we want to check if the combat target is not null pointer. That's like if combat target is not equal to null pointer. That's what that is. And then inside of the if statement, you want to do all the stuff that we did before. And this is basically doing the exact same thing. Create a local variable named translation warp target of type f vector, and assign it to the value of get translation warp target. So it's going to return a vector from the function that we made in C++ already. And then we're going to use motion warp's add or update warp target from location function and pass it in the translation target and the translation warp target as the two arguments. So those are the two things you're going to pass in, right? Because it needs two arguments for those things. And then you can do the same thing for get rotation warp target. Once you've done this, the next part you need to do is remove motion warping, the original one, because now you have motion warp. That's what it's going to look like, right? After you come back into into the editor. And then what you want to do is disconnect and remove all these things. I mean, if you really want to put motion warp back in there, you can, but you don't need this anymore. This doesn't need to be here anymore. You can actually remove it. The other thing you want to do is in the animation blueprint. If you still want to use the animation blueprints, you want to use the notifies instead of the way we're doing it with on frame. Then what you want to try and do is get rid of motion warping, the original one, put in motion warp and replace it. Literally just interpose or kind of inject, the new motion warp component that you're creating in C++, you can do that instead of motion warping. Again, you can turn these off, and I encourage you guys to try different things out and tweak the motion warping so it's better than what I've shown you. Again, it takes a little bit of tweaking, but you can make it really, really good. And then finally, compile, save, and test, and you should see something very similar to what we had before, where the enemy is still able to attack you, and they can use their the C++ code instead of the stuff that's inside of blueprints. Okay, so that's what the test is. Last thing you need to do is I also need you to build your project. Make sure it works when you build it. I know building is a big thing now, as Connor continues to ask you guys to do stuff with to show off your code and your game during your project classes, right? So yeah, that's it for this week. Any questions around ICE 10? Again, this is due tomorrow by midnight. Not that difficult to do, and we did most of it together. Questions? All right, guys. Well, if there's no questions, I'll stop recording now, and I'll see you guys next week in person. Okay, so next week is an in-person class. Thanks a lot, Griffin. Take care, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, guys.